I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang is a powerful film that portrays the harsh realities of the American penal system in the 1920s and 30s. It's based on the true story of Robert Elliott Burns, a World War I veteran who was wrongly convicted of robbery and sentenced to up to 10 years on a brutal chain gang. The film raises important questions about the ethics of punishment and the impact of incarceration on individuals and society. It was so persuasive that it had a significant effect on public opinion and prompted reforms in the American prison system. It is a classic example of socially conscious filmmaking that worked, and it continues to resonate with audiences today.
I am New York City zero-budget guerrilla filmmaker Sean Weathers.
And I'm Canadian screenwriter and playwright Angus Combe. Watch along with us as we comment on, react to, and review I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang. You are watching Screened.
You didn't get the intro right. You
I
left out
didn't.
a big chunk. Yeah, you left
Did
out the
I?
important part. The only reason that people don't like the video is because they're like, oh, well, I'm watching the whole movie. Why are you guys talking over it? That's why you got to say, uh, uh, watch. You said watch along with us, right?
Yes, yes,
Did you say, as we comment on?
yes.
You did? You said all that?
I, I did, yeah. Watch along
Comment
with us as
on.
react to and review.
Oh, see,
Yeah.
that's my fault. I was looking at the movie. I wasn't paying full attention. It sounded so
Aha.
short. When I wrote it, it felt longer.
Yeah.
So, but it's good that
Well,
we paused on that anyway, because that's kind of like the only negative like we're getting with these videos is people are expecting to see the full movie without us commenting on it. Like, otherwise the comments have been, pretty positive.
yeah.
But yeah, just to address that early on, we can't play the movie. The movie has copyright, and these movies aren't that expensive to find. They're all pretty old movies that you can find like pretty cheaply, either
Hmm.
to stream or to just get a pretty cheap copy on Amazon. But
Yeah.
yeah, obviously we can't play the movie. We show as much as the movie as copyright will let us show, which is a lot. And yeah, we're just sharing our points of view and certain things we would say on the podcast anyway, and we're just saying it as we watch the movie.
Yeah. One thing I like about the IMDb lately is that if you look up a movie there, it will show you where it's playing, like where it's streaming, where you can see it. So often they'll have 4 or 5 different places you could see the movie. Sometimes they don't, like if it's obscure, but it's not a bad way to figure out where you can watch this film.
hmm I don't know if maybe we can. I'll think about it. Maybe put links to where you can watch the movie in the description. Maybe something like that to simmer people down.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
no, it's not an intention to play the whole movie. It's to let you know that you can watch along the whole movie with us. You can play our commentary track if you just want to watch the movie yourself. And yeah, that's all it's meant to say. So anyway,
yeah.
that's established. We're just gonna establish that one time, and whoever didn't hear this didn't hear it.
Yes.
This movie is one of my favorite old time message movies. We saw a movie so some of the more recent movies we've seen in Screened. One was a timeless movie, which was Eyes Without a Face, because it had that old Victorian style house and that Gothic feel and all that classic architecture that doesn't come down, like, the type of architecture where it's like, these are historical buildings, you can't touch that. It felt timeless. It didn't feel like a 60s movie. Like, you probably go a few blocks away from where they shot this, and you had people with like all the 60s garb and, women with hairy armpits and whatever you had in the 60s you could find. But you watch that movie and it felt completely timeless. But we seen another great movie, Battleship Potemkin, that we did recently, that is so much a time capsule, not just of the time period, but also of the filmmaking style. It was very much a 1920s style film, and it was one of the better executed films in the silent era in terms of it took full advantage of that style of filmmaking. You can't have dialogue, you have certain limitations, you have certain positives and negatives, and it took full advantage of all the positives that you can take from that era. Because there are other great films from the silent era that, man, you're like, you watch this and you're like, man, this would benefit so much if people could just say that dialogue. instead of having to pantomime and then we see word bubbles on the screen. Or if there could be more motion and movement instead of people going from room to room. Well, there's no need to go from room to room. There's all this motion with the camera because the dialogue is so unimportant and because the main set piece is a ship that's constantly moving. So the limitations of the era didn't affect the film, and then the innovations of the era or the certain aspects at filmmaking that wasn't developed at that time doesn't hinder it in any way. So it was kind of the perfect silent era movie, and I feel similar to this in that this is it has a lot of the elements of some certain 1930s films. It's heavy, heavy on the messaging. It has a lot of the times where they cut to the screen and you see a map to indicate the character is going from one location to another. I don't know why they felt that was so important, but they do that a lot in these seven movies. But
Yes.
yeah, the certain aspects of filmmaking, I think, of this time, where it's the early silent era, you're going from room to room, not a lot of establishing shots. This kind of executes this time and style of filmmaking uh, pretty well for the early 1930s, that early talkie era.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's pretty much a masterpiece. I think it's incredibly well done. Um, yeah, I think it's one of the great movies to really make a point and actually have an effect in the real world. As I may have mentioned earlier, that it really did have an effect. It changed things. It changed the prison system. So that's a rare thing, I think, for a movie to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that I said all those positive things, I will say something that's hilarious that I always
Okay.
find hilarious in any context. But anyone tells their story, they are always this altruistic, 100% virtue of goodness with absolutely zero flaws. And every and anything that you can find is always against their success. And I'm sure this guy has a great story. Obviously, he told it and it facilitated change. But man, it is heavy-handed how they make this character seem like he does no wrong. He has pure intentions, and the whole world is this evil cesspool that's out to get him, and he's never committed a crime. He's never done anything wrong. He's just pure virtue. It's just hilarious. There's no nuance or any kind of ambiguity as to whether we should root for this character or any questions of his character or anything like that. No
No,
shades
well,
of gray.
no, I think that the movie probably makes it more so than the book. I haven't read the book, but my understanding is there are some subtle differences, and one of them may be that he was perhaps a little more involved in the crime in real life than they kind of show him to be in the movie. I think they make him look really innocent in the movie. But I mean, regardless, the crime was so petty. I mean, stealing $5.80 and then getting punished so severely. Like, I think it's still a valid point that the punishment is way, way out of line for that crime, whether he was actually guilty or not, you know. But I think in the movies, they really want it to be super clear that, you know, he's not even guilty. He just got kind of railroaded there. So it's super clear that he doesn't deserve it. Perhaps it's a little more ambiguous in real life, but but yeah, you know, that's certainly something that they like to do in movies, particularly um, characters that are perfect. And I think I was once taught that one way to make a main character sympathetic immediately is to have him be a victim of injustice. And I think that's really true. I think it does work when you see a character so clearly a victim of injustice as this character is. You can't help but sympathize with him and root for him.
Yeah. I would say like having the character have some flaw though is not the worst thing in the world because you give them conflict, internal
Hmm.
conflict. Like like Jesus, I know I made a mistake, but should it cost me the rest of my life? And that's a
Yeah,
dilemma people can leave the theater with, It's like, man,
yeah,
you got to watch your choices and you know, I've had flaws. Should I be as staunch in my stance for other people who made mistakes as well, and
Yeah.
but I mean, again, this is just obviously we're just debating things. I mean, there's no question about the greatness of the movie and the performances and anything like that. But I will say
Hmm.
another thing that's a staple of early 30s is the acting style. It's just so over exaggerated. It's just very, very over exaggerated because these actors are clearly from pullover from the silent era, and there's no subtlety with their performances in any kind of a way. And
Yeah.
Paul Mooney, he's one of my favorite actors of this era because he over exaggerates so much. Like his performance in Scarface, which I think was like the same year or maybe just before it, was it's such a classic because how hammy he is. And Angel Over My Shoulder, something like that. But there are several movies he made that I just love them solely based on his performance, but he is very, very animated with his actions and his expressions, I should say.
Yes. And he's sort of known for really immersing himself in the parts too. Like he really goes over the top. He's kind of predicting where things are going to go with some of the method actors in the future who really kind of become the character. And I think he kind of annoyed a lot of his co-stars because of that. He was just so kind of, into himself and into his own character. But the results were good. He really did make a lot of good movies, and he was nominated for a lot of awards as well. 5 times I think he was nominated for best actor, and he deserved it. He was very good at what he did, and he was even called, I think, the new Lon Chaney at one point because he kind of disappeared into his roles. Lon Chaney, of course, being famous for makeup and kind of making
The Man
himself
with a
look different.
Thousand Faces or something like that was his name.
Yeah, yeah.
Something like that.
And so I guess, Paul Mooney was maybe less gimmicky about it, but he kind of disappeared into these parts and really kind of couldn't tell it was him necessarily. He just became these other characters, sort of like a Lon
Yeah, I mean,
Chaney.
when he played an Asian guy in The Good Earth, I could have sworn he was Asian.
Yeah.
It's one of those movies. I think those are one of his Oscar movies that just
Yes.
hasn't aged well at all. But yeah.
Yes. Well, I think when Irving Thalberg actually offered him the role, he said, "I'm about as Chinese as President Herbert Hoover." so, so I think he understood that that this was kind of weird for him to be doing it, but he really committed to it though, didn't he? He just kind of
I,
went
I
in
wouldn't
and
know. I the minute I saw he was playing Asian, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna pass on that one.
well,
No, thank
yeah,
you. No
yeah.
thanks.
I mean, to modernize, yeah, it definitely seems a little bit, but it's interesting. Even he thought at the time, this is a bit weird. Should I be doing
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
So
And it may be a good
interesting.
movie. I mean, when I was gonna watch it, this was a while ago, so it has nothing to do with PC or cancel culture or anything like that. I just think it's weird when people do stuff like that. It's just uncomfortable. You can't look
Yeah,
past it, you know? When
yeah,
the only time I've seen it multiple times is Breakfast at Tiffany's because I like that movie so much. But I can't even watch Breakfast at Tiffany's anymore because of what's his name that plays an Asian character? The that short comedian character. He's a white guy that plays
yeah,
an Asian, and he plays like a really over the top stereotypical Asian character.
yeah.
Um, what the hell is his name? He used to be the biggest star in Hollywood as a child actor. Let me look it up. Breakfast at Tiffany's. You see, you should be doing this as I'm stalling, but you're just looking at me
Yeah,
as I'm trying to stall for time for you to look it up. It's so much for the illusion that we could remember this stuff.
yeah. Well, we're just so all over the map here.
Yeah.
Um,
What the hell's his name?
I can't remember.
This is bad.
Mickey
Uh,
Rooney?
Mickey Rooney. He's not even on the top credits. He's all the way at the
No.
bottom. Jesus.
Yeah,
But yeah, Mickey Rooney is, a white guy. He was like, 5'2" or something. But he's one of those child actors that didn't grow. A lot of those child actors are like that for whatever reason. But
yeah,
he was a very big star as a child actor. And yeah, he played an Asian character, and it's that stereotypical, me a Asian character. And it's just like, dude, I think that movie was
Yeah,
made in like the 60s. It's like, fuck.
yeah,
It's just so cringe, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That kind of thing just isn't cool.
No, no.
Um, but one other thing about Paul Mooney is that he was in the business for quite a long time, like over 30 years, but he only made about 29 films, or maybe not even 29 because he appeared on some TV shows, but he made very few.
Look at his face as he's watching that burger. He's such a ham. He's
Oh,
such,
yeah.
you know who he reminds me of? Charlton Heston. Charlton Heston is
Oh,
the biggest ham you could find. I
yeah.
remember I was watching, I don't know if it was Omni-Man, I think it was, but it was some post-apocalyptic movie where he
Oh,
touched
yes.
water for the first time and he washed his face for like either the first time or a long time. I just remember he
Yeah.
let the water run and his legs would, oh. And then he put his hands in the water. He was like, and he held it up to the screen and he splashed in his face. He's like, oh.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, you're washing your face. Calm the fuck down. But yeah, Paul Mooney reminds me of
Yeah.
Charlton Heston. But I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I mean to cut you off. Just that look on his face, it
Yeah.
just took me.
Yeah. No, that's good because this is an important moment here. This is where he is becoming the victim of injustice, and we're seeing it happen. And he couldn't be more innocent, really. Like he doesn't want to participate in this. But the other thing that always bothers me every time I see this is they basically talked the guy into making free hamburgers for them. He's making them free hamburgers, and they decide, or the one guy decides to rob him before they've even got the burgers. Like, why don't they wait and eat the burgers first and then rob him? Like this is free food. It
You
always
know
strikes me
what?
as a little weird.
I know people like that. I don't know
Do you?
criminals that have shot people or anything like that, but I know people like that where their logic is so stupid. It's just
Yeah.
like, think for a second, dude. Like I had this employee that I let go. I don't know if I told this story on the podcast before, but I digress a lot into stories. But um, she had a job that was the easiest job in the world. And I let so many of her mistakes go just because I didn't want to give up on her. She was an employee for a while. There's a certain sentimentality. It's like you let mistakes go, you let mistakes go, you let mistakes go. And eventually it just got too unbearable and I had to fire her. And her whole thing was the thing is, right before I fired her, I wanted to wait till the end of the week. She quit. Literally, the day before I was going to fire her, she quit. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how dumb of a decision is that to make? I was literally, the reason it's a dumb decision is she could have gotten unemployment.
Yeah.
And and she lost the unemployment because of that. And I was
Yeah.
like, dude, such a dumb decision. And now, if she would have just been a decent employee, all she had to do was just be listen to me a little bit. She could have had a job paying her or $20 an hour, around $20 an hour, 40 hours a week, and she desperately needs the money, right?
Yeah.
Instead, now she's just hunting down like I think like 10 hours of overtime. Like she's just like spending like the next several months of her life trying to hunt down 10 hours of overtime. And it's like if you would have just done a decent job, like I let you get away with murder. All you had to do was do that and you could have been getting the easiest 40 hours per week. And now you're hunting down a fraction of 1 week's worth of salary for the next few months making no money at home, you know? And it's just
Hmm.
like some people they just spite themselves with their behavior. It's just like they can't get out of their own way. And I think
Yeah.
for me, that knowing people like that just capsulates that mentality where it's just like, yeah, you're gonna give me this, but you know what? I could take more, but with force, it's like I could make an even dumber decision. Like you can't see that money or that opportunity and let it go. And
Yeah.
yeah, there are just a lot of people like that, just can't get out of their own way.
Yeah. I guess so. It just always struck me as weird. Like, let him finish cooking the burgers, eat the burgers, and then rob him if you're going to rob him. Like,
Come on.
give.
I thought you were going to say, don't rob him. He's a nice guy. He gave you
Well,
free
I mean,
burgers.
obviously, yeah, that would be the thing. And this isn't the first time either. He's apparently given him free burgers several times. So, I mean, this is a guy who knows him and can probably identify him very easily. So, another dumb decision. You're robbing a guy who you actually know. That seems a bit weird.
Yeah.
But
And again, I related to my job. So many people quit the job and then come back there because they're unemployed and want me to rehire them. I'm like, no, I fired you. Like you should have realized the grass wasn't greener on the other side and did your job while you were here, you know? You can't
yeah,
save stupid, man. You can't save stupid.
no, I guess not.
Yeah. Lucky for you,
So,
you don't have these type of stories. You're keeping yourself around a better quality of people than I am.
well, maybe, or maybe I'm just keeping to myself more because I'm self-employed. So
Ah,
all day long, I just see nobody, which has its own problems. But um, yeah, people are the worst, as I think they might have said on Seinfeld.
yeah.
People are the worst. Um,
I always this food scene always had my curiosity because I try to look up when they said what they were eating, what it was, because there was like grease, fried dough, and fat or something like that. I'm like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
think they said a little bit more detail what it actually was, and I tried to Google it, I couldn't find it. Obviously, it's
yeah,
black and white with no close-ups, you can't really see it.
yeah.
But grease and fried dough and fat, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's sort of like bread and water, but worse. It's
A lot worse.
yeah. I guess if it's fat and grease, there's a lot of calories or something. It keeps them going, but it's pretty nasty, I think, to eat.
Yeah. You know
But
what? That makes a lot of sense. You fill them up with calories because they're going to be working all day, and it's
yeah,
pretty inexpensive as well.
yeah. I mean, it could almost be the byproduct of other food that you're cooking for yourselves.
It's
Just
completely,
take.
it's not just a byproduct of the food they're cooking for themselves, but the byproduct of like stuff the butchers or like other people can't
Yes,
use, So,
yeah. Give me the crap, and I'll give it to these guys. Yeah,
yeah.
basically. Yeah, I find this fascinating to just see this world of the prison and the chain gang and how it works. It's like, just seeing the way they hook the chains up and everything. I just find it really fascinating. Never sort of occurred to me. How would you do this? How would you keep guys chained up like this?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. I like that aspect too. I wish it was a little bit more procedural, where it's kind of
yeah,
like, where you watched like French Connection, another movie we covered on the channel, and it just shows you the inner workings of how everything works with the cops and how they execute things. I wish there was just a little bit more of that because whatever you do see is kind of interesting. So
yeah, yeah, definitely. And of course, this is, as I said, it's a true story, which Robert Elliott
well,
Burns, he
based on a true story. It's just
based on a true
referencing.
story.
Yeah.
Yes, but
Inspired by a true story.
it started out as a true story that happened, and then Robert Elliott Burns wrote a book, although it actually was, at first, it was serialized in True Detective Mystery magazine in January 1931, and then I guess it was released in book form after that, and it very quickly made into this movie. Um, and so it's interesting to compare, at least what I can tell the book had in it versus the movie, because in a way, the movie was made while the story was still kind of ongoing because he was still kind of at large. And, his story kind of continued on after the movie. So the movie kind of made up its own ending. Um, but that wasn't really the ending of the character, if you know what I mean, the real life character.
The ending they have for this movie, which supposedly was accidental, is such a brilliant ending. I think the reason
Yes.
I like this movie so much is because of the ending. There's certain
Yes.
movies that end on such a crescendo that really hits home the message of what you just watched so well. It elevates the movie. For instance,
Yes.
I think one of the greatest endings of all time is 2001: A Space Odyssey. Without that ending, it
Yeah.
may not be my favorite movie of all time. And I think
Yeah.
this has one of the greatest endings of all time as well. It's just an
Yes.
amazing ending. A
Yeah.
movie like Treasure of Sierra Madre. I didn't expect, spoiler, Humphrey Bogart to get killed. And it's great. There's certain movies where it's just like, man, like the ending really elevates this already good
Yes.
product to another level.
Yeah.
It's a happy accident supposedly, but it's a brilliant ending.
Yes, I agree. And that's, I first saw the movie when I was about 18, and that's really what, really hit me was the end. And it stuck with me for years. And for years, I wanted to get a copy of this movie, and it took me a long time to find one. And that ending is just what stuck with me the whole time, and I thought about it all the time. And in a way, it is kind of it's the final sort of proof of the point of this, I guess. You know, it's like this is kind of an expose of prisons and more specifically the chain gang and what it does to people, because I actually took a criminology course years ago. And one of the things that shocked me was learning about prisons and how basically prisons had been designed with a purpose in mind, which was essentially to reform people. And they had basically been a failure very quickly. And everybody knew they were a failure because people didn't really get reformed by going to prison. It often had the opposite effect, where it would turn them more into career criminals because they spend all their time with other criminals, they learn techniques from other criminals, they make friends, they get out and they commit more crimes than before they went in. Like that's sort of the not everyone, of course, there's exceptions, but prisons, everything that they were designed to do, they've kind of failed to accomplish. And I think that's certainly what we're seeing here. Is that this is not doing anything good. And you take a good character who's essentially honest, and by the end of the movie, he becomes something else thanks to the chain gang or the prison system, if
Mhm.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's such a dichotomy as well with society. It's before someone goes to jail, you hear they did anything wrong, cancel them. They should never have another job again. Throw them in jail and throw away the key. Let's just get rid of this person. Or, oh my God, they murdered that girl. You know what? You murdered that person, you deserve to die. It's like we're so desperate to get people in there if they do
Yes.
anything wrong. And if they do something that's really wrong, we want them there for the rest of their life. But then you
Yeah.
have the same people. We need criminal reform. Criminals need to be treated better. And it's just like, wait a minute. Like, do you want to lock them up and throw away the key and like have them just be castrated if they touched a woman? And yeah, I'm like, yeah, sure. That sounds like it makes sense. But the other things that you're saying sound that make sense, but they kind of don't make sense together. It's like there's so many things about criminal rights and when criminals get out of prison, like job reform and being able to have them be able to get jobs and reincorporate them in society and have them be treated better while they're in prison. Well, are they these terrible people that need to be locked away forever and throw away the key and death penalties and all this other stuff or incarcerate them? Or are they people that we need to treat better while they're in prison and have better conditions and when they come out, give them good jobs and get them right back into society as soon as possible? Like it doesn't sound like those two make sense together. So that I find that interesting, and it's usually the same people, and they're completely oblivious to it, but they're usually liberals on the side of like on the side of the same argument. It's like cancel everyone, throw everyone away. Oh my God, we need criminal reform so bad. It's like wait a minute,
Yeah.
like come on, guys. Um, and the other thing is much like the point they're proving here, it's something I've always thought about as well, is that as sophisticated or as we think ourselves as society, even back then, the whole point of this is that this is too barbaric. I still think periodically, like, man, I would never want to commit a crime, never want to get falsely accused of a crime because, dude, I don't want to get raped. I don't want to I don't want to be surrounded by the scourge of the earth and,
Yeah.
not be scared to take a shower or be locked away with some criminal, locked up for like 8 hours with the lights out in a room with some, guy who may have like murdered someone. And I just don't want to be shanked. Just that whole lifestyle is just scary. And I saw this, there was this guy who interviewed his clip is very popular in a certain segment of Twitter, where he was talking about being what do you call those guards in prison? A prison guard, whatever the term for it is. But
Yeah.
he was talking about like he was like, yo, it smelled like dookie in there. Everybody smelled like hot dookie. I couldn't breathe. He was like, they smell like ass. It's just I had to throw up. I had throw up in my mouth because they smell like ass. I was like, this dude was just like, and he was so genuine too. He was like, and that's what I
Yeah.
think about. Like everyone's either having consensual or non-consensual anal sex, you know? So you can't have that shitty smell. Everyone's scared to take a shower. Like everyone's smelling like, and he just said it smells like ass. And he's like, he had to throw up for his first day based on the smell. And he said he went
Wow.
to a woman's prison and he said it smells 10 times worse. He's like, it smells like coochie and ass. It smells. I was like,
Oh man.
I was like, this guy needs to go on tour. You know, he's
Yeah.
just hilarious. But that's what I think about. I think about this stuff. Like when I see something like that, I can't let it go. It just haunts me. You know, it's like I just get like all this paranoia of like, oh my God, like, you know, I can't back on the sidewalk. I can't run a red light. I can't go to prison on any circumstance. But
Yeah.
just the fact that like we're in a society where like you can do anything on your phone. We have self-driving cars, but yet if you commit a crime and go to prison, it's nothing but rape and anal sex and the smell of ass the whole time you're there, you know, and drugs. How many people have I've seen that said, oh, they did more drugs in prison than when they came out of prison, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, you know, toilet wine and oh God.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, that's all of that aside, I mean, one of the concepts originally of prison was supposed to be that each prisoner was isolated, so he was on his own, and he had a Bible, and it was sort of a religious Christian kind of thing where he gets to read his Bible, and he gets to whatever, he's taught stuff, and he's alone, he's isolated, and he's sort of reformed. But I mean, very quickly, prisons became overcrowded, and you suddenly have four people in one cell together, and so they're not isolated, and nobody's reading a Bible. They're basically just socializing. And so it became something very different. It was not what it was supposed to be. And a lot of if you look at other systems, like indigenous systems of justice, they are based on restoring order to society. They're not based on punishing people. So, what's going to make society heal, and that often means, you have the victim work it out with the person who victimized them, and they might have to apologize and repay stuff, and everybody feels satisfied under those kind of systems. Whereas prison, nobody feels satisfied because often the victim doesn't even know what happened, and they don't get their stuff back if their stuff's stolen, and the guy in prison just feels like, how could you do this to me? How could you treat me like this? And he's so bitter that when he gets out, he's gonna just get back at society and do even worse things. I mean,
And
I'm
much like
kind
our
of
lead character here, they all feel like they're the victim. They all mentally
yes,
spin it in a way where it's like, well, I'm the victim of like, you know, this or that, or I'm the victim of circumstance, you know?
yeah,
Well, I wouldn't
yeah,
have had to do this if my racist boss didn't fire me. I wouldn't have had to do this. Or I wouldn't
yeah,
have had to do this if that girl didn't falsely accuse me of touching her when I didn't. Or there's always a reason why they're the victim in everything, you know, which is
yeah,
kind of why I mentioned that at the beginning. Not saying that this guy that this movie is based on isn't a victim, but it's always funny that, you know, anytime a story is being told, it's rarely been told with nuance, you know?
yes, yeah, that's true. And actually, this kind of arc that we're talking about here is a bit like Angels with Dirty Faces that we talked about in another podcast. The same idea that there's the guy who winds up going to prison becomes a career criminal, and the guy who doesn't, even though they were kind of guilty of the same thing, he becomes a good person, a priest. So again, what is prison doing to people? You know,
Yeah.
but this may be one of the first films that really kind of tackled that and did it really well. I don't know if it's ever been done better than this.
Yeah. So you did say something, since we're looking at a calendar, again, this is another thing that's very typical of older films. It's like, how do we
Yes,
show that time passed? Let's literally show a
yes,
calendar showing months
yes,
passing. But you mentioned
yes,
you saw this when you were 18. So yeah, tell
yes.
us about the experience of seeing this in the 30s. Like how was it when it first came?
Oh, yes, it was a very different time. Very, very different time. Yeah, no, it was not the 30s. I may be old, but I'm not that old.
Hmm.
I don't
Wow.
remember the 1930s.
Okay. You were a baby
But
at the time. How could you?
yes, yes. You know, those first 5 years, you really don't remember too much.
Hmm.
But before we get too far off track here, I just want to say that this actor here who's helping out our hero, um, he's an actor named Everett Brown. He's uncredited in this movie, as a lot of people are. There's actually a lot of uncredited performances in this film. Small cast list, but he seems like a significant character to me. And this is all fairly accurate, I think, in terms of the true story. I think this is exactly what he did the first time he escaped. Um, so I think we are following the true story and or the book quite closely in all of this stuff, which is cool. But Everett Brown, though, he actually had a pretty good career. Um, he was in of 40 movies, I think, between 1927 and 1953. And he was in some pretty high profile movies like King Kong and um, a lot of Tarzan movies, actually. Um, Kid Millions, which was Eddie Cantor musical. And he was also in the very famous movie that I've never seen, Gone with the Wind, playing Big
Oh
Sam.
God. Oh,
Yeah,
ooh,
but
ooh.
I think that's
Gone
a
with the
character.
Wind.
That's a character you hear about, Big Sam, in Gone with the Wind. So you know, he had quite a few roles in Hollywood at a
Actually,
time.
I have a filmmaking friend of mine who we watched a lot of the same older movies. At
Yeah,
a certain point, like he got kids and married and stuff like that, and
yeah,
stopped making movies with me and stopped watching as many movies as I did. But
yeah.
for a several year period, we were making like zero budget movies together. We kind of watched a lot of the similar movies, and we both watch Gone with the Wind, and we both watch Birth of a Nation.
Oh
Birth
yes.
of a Nation, one of the most famously racist movies because they make the KKK out to be heroes. And we
Mm.
both independently agreed the more racist film by far was Gone with the Wind.
Oh yeah.
Because at least Birth of a Nation was straightforward.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
were not hiding their message. Birth of a Nation,
No.
Gone with the Wind was so subversive in that they made these black people not just look bad, but they were just mad that they were free. It's like, no, man, I just don't want to be free. I want to be serving you for the rest of my life. Damn the North. It's
Yeah.
like, it's just like, oh, it's so tough to watch.
Yeah.
Um, so tough to watch. So yeah, anytime I hear reference to Birth of a Nation, and it's always considered one of the greatest movies of all time, and it doesn't get called out for its racism enough. Some people do recognize
Yeah.
that, but a lot of people just look at the lavish production and things like that. But it's so subversively racist. It's just, but
That's Gone with the Wind, not Birth of
yes.
a Nation. Yes.
Oh, did I misspeak and did I mix those two up?
I
Yes,
think you might
that's
have said Birth of a Nation. Yeah.
okay.
Just at
No,
the
it's
end.
Gone with the Wind. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I still haven't seen it. I can't really comment, but it's one of those movies I just never had any urge to see it. You know, it just didn't interest me.
Yeah, the time I saw it, it's like I wanted to see every movie that's considered historic. It's like,
Yeah.
listen, I'm making movies. Like I may never make a movie ever like On with the Wind. I may never make a movie that costs more than $1,000. You don't know where you're gonna stand with things, And
Yes.
but you want, if you're part of a field, you want to be knowledgeable of it. And if this is considered one of the greatest movies ever made, and I'm making movies, why wouldn't I watch it? So that was kind of
Yeah.
my approach. Like anything
Sure.
historic, no matter when it was made or what type of subject matter, I just wanted to see it. And I went into it
Yeah.
not thinking about anything about race, but
Yeah.
I left it with a very different mentality. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this first prison break, pretty much all the details are in the book. I think they do a pretty accurate version of it here. Everything that we're going to see in this movie, which presumably is also part of his true story, or what he claimed was his true story when he wrote the book.
Mhm. Anytime I see people going through swampland, I always think, what is it? What's in swamps? Is it crocodiles or alligators?
Oh, good question. I always get those mixed up.
Okay, whichever
Uh,
is the one that's you see, you never you just stand there and you think. Like I'm
yeah.
giving you a chance to stall for time. I'm stalling for time to give you a chance to look it up. We talked about this like 20 minutes ago, and you're not taking my cue as I'm stalling for time. But yeah, whichever
Yes.
one it is, anytime I see scenes like these, I always think, man, like my worst nightmare is like a crocodile or alligators just gonna come up and just like eat me. Anytime I see stuff
So
like this.
alligators prefer freshwater, while crocodiles prefer saltwater or brackish water. So if this is freshwater, it would probably be alligators.
So what's in swamps? Is it
Well,
salt water or fresh water?
I would think it
Fresh
mostly
water?
would be freshwater, I would think.
Yeah.
Um, that's what I would think.
Yeah.
Uh, Georgia apparently has between 200,000 and 250,000 alligators in the state.
So it's an alligator.
It's an alligator. Yeah.
An alligator is freshwater?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just have nightmares of an alligator because I forgot which war it was. But they were talking I don't know if it was the Vietnam War, it was some war where they were talking about the fact that the soldiers were trapped, might have been Vietnam, and they were eating all the cattle.
Oh, yeah.
But they were eating the cattle, and then the whatever it was, alligators or crocodiles or whatever, or it would be alligators, right? In swamps, you're saying? So I guess the alligators
Yeah.
were they would hibernate because there was no food to eat because
Oh,
the
yes.
soldiers were eating all the cattle. And then when they started getting attacked and they got backed into the swamps, they were all eaten by the alligators. And they
Wow.
just immediately started like surrendering because as they got backed in, they were just all being eaten by these alligators who were hibernating because the soldiers were eating all the alligators' food with the cattle. And they just all these hungry alligators hibernating, as soon as these soldiers started going on, they kept eating them and they just all had to surrender. I just remember it to me like, oh my God, that is so horrific.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
see these footage in Florida, here in the US, where you see like these Floridians just casually like shooing off alligators. I'm like, ooh, like I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine that. It's just like they're casually walking down the street and they're like shoo off an alligator. I'm like, being someone who, basically spent 90% of my life in New York City, where it's like if I see a possum, I'll freak out. The most you'll see is like stray dogs and stray cats.
Yeah.
Just that the thought of that is just a nightmare to me anytime I see scenes like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. There's some amazing videos you can see of cats fighting off alligators and or crocodiles. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those, where they're like sitting on a dock and the alligator will sort of come up and the cat will just swipe it and it'll go back in the water.
That's
That's
that's a
some nerve.
strange thing about them. It's like as long as you avoid the front of their mouth, they're completely harmless because even when they
Yeah.
open their mouths, they can't see. But if you miss the front of their mouth, you're gonna lose a limb.
Yeah. 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 I'm happy to not have to deal with alligators or crocodiles on a
But
day-to-day
don't you people
basis.
in Canada like deal with like bears like walking into your house and stuff? At least that's what I see on the internet.
uh, Yeah, not too much in the cities, but there are places where there are bears and potentially dangerous bears. Um, yeah, that's one
Yeah,
thing.
I'll
Like,
see plenty of videos on the internet where like a bear
yeah,
will walk into like a convenience store, grab
oh
some
yeah,
candy bars and walk right out.
yeah. Well, I'm sure there have been incidents. Yeah, but that's one thing. Like if you're going camping or hiking, I generally do it in areas where there are only smaller bears. Black bears or brown bears. But when you're in a place with grizzly bears, I often think, wow, a grizzly bear would be pretty impossible to defend against and get away from if if something went bad. But yeah, I don't know. I guess you just live with it and hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, around this part of the movie, I'm like, shouldn't his biggest concern be getting a shower? I was waiting for his Charlton Heston scene where he
Oh
just
yes,
splashes water on his face and orgasms or something. But
yeah,
yeah, I just kept thinking of that video of the guy saying, "Smells like ass."
yeah,
He does everything except take a shower.
yes. And of course, this scene here reminds me. I'm not even sure of
But
what
I guess he
movie,
had a
but
shower in the swamp, right? Where he was in the water.
well, yeah, that's true. He was underwater there. Yeah, yeah, that would help. Um, but this is a kind of scene that you see in a lot of modern films, or maybe in westerns. I've seen this kind of scene where characters getting a shave or a haircut, and he's wanted, and here's the law sitting in there, not realizing. Um, I don't know if this is the first time they did it, but I think it's a good little suspense scene.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an early trope. Probably not the first time. By the time you hit the 30s, cinema's been around for like, what was
Yeah,
cinema around from 1900 or so?
yeah,
So,
about that. Yeah,
yeah. So around 32 years of cinema. Probably one of
yeah,
the earlier times it happened, but I doubt the first.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I just keep thinking, man, he must smell so ripe in that suit right now. Smell like
Oh
ace.
yeah, hopefully he did. Hopefully he got to clean the swamp, and that'd be a shame to put on a brand new suit smelling like that.
Smell like
Of
ass
course,
and alligators. When the first time I saw this
yeah,
movie and when this guy got let out, I thought he would just been right back to prison. I thought he would have had more of an
yes,
arc.
yeah, I kind of expected that too, and that's Alan Jenkins, of course, playing Barney Sykes. Um, Alan Jenkins, who's really recognizable. He's in a ton of other movies,
Oh,
a ton of pre-code movies.
so many
Yeah,
Warner Brothers
but
movies where he's just like a low-level
oh yeah,
thug.
yeah. He's one of those guys you don't necessarily know who he is, but you recognize him. You see him in all these different movies. But I actually wondered if this was going to be one of these cases where he betrays our hero and he calls the cops or something, but um, doesn't make sense. And I'm glad it didn't work that way. But I kept thinking, oh, is this going to be one of those times, because he's telling him to wait here, and I don't know. I was a little worried it was some kind of setup.
Yeah. I didn't expect the movie to be as linear as it was the first time I saw it. There's really no other
No,
characters that get development. It's just the only characters that change in any way change around the lead character, and it's just to facilitate things he does. But it's just literally all about him for almost every scene of the movie.
yeah.
No
And
subplots, no
this is,
side character development, anything.
yeah, this is Noel Francis playing this Linda, who I guess we kind of figure out is a prostitute here.
Mhm. She has
There's
such a
some kind.
1930s woman's body.
Oh yes, yes. She was also in a lot of movies.
Yeah. There are three blondes in his movies. I've seen in a lot of other movies, but like I wouldn't necessarily
Yes.
know their name, but it's just like you recognize them. She's the first of the three. But yeah, I've definitely
Yeah.
seen her in a lot of stuff.
Yes. And she actually died fairly young at age 53, but she made a lot of movies before dying. Um, yeah, mainly in the 30s though.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
This is the
interesting.
scene where he gawks at her, looking her up and down. Again, a very 30s woman's
Yes,
body.
yes. This, of course, is a pre-code movie, and that's the kind of thing they didn't really like so much when the code came down. Was
Mhm.
characters leering at a woman's body like that, having the camera move down the body. You wouldn't see that so much after the code gets enforced about 2 years after this.
Yeah.
But this is very much a pre-code movie. Lots of edgy stuff in here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's clear they're gonna get it on here. That's the
Yeah.
weird thing
Oh,
about
yeah.
another weird thing that we
Yes.
see in that scene, and then we transition to this scene. Not a lot of transition shots or not a lot of establishing shots in movies in this era. It's like we never see what that building looks like when he goes into. We never see what his apartment looks like that he lives in later on. They're just in different rooms at different times.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess
One
this was a
interesting
thing
thing.
back then, burger stands.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, I mean, for New York, I've never seen burgers being sold like that. It's always hot dogs
Yeah.
or like,
That's
kebabs.
very true. Very true. But you do see that in a lot of older movies where there'll just be a little counter somewhere and the guy will be cooking burgers. But yeah, you don't see that as much. Definitely. A lot of hot dog carts.
I guess hot dogs are so much easier to cook. You just leave them in a
Yeah.
pot of hot water all day,
Oh, yeah.
and then you just pull them out and you just put it on a bun. A burger, you have to
That's right.
actually cook it. And if you cook it too
Yeah.
far ahead of time, it gets really dry, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So much easier to sell hot dogs.
And you got to cook it right or you could poison people. you know, hot dogs, you can pretty much eat them as just raw almost. I mean, they're not raw, but when you buy wieners, you could just eat them out of the package. They're safe.
Yeah.
Don't have to cook them really well. Actually, this moment that we're seeing here is another one that is right out of the book, as I understand it. That's a true incident where he thought he was going to get caught, but they're actually chasing some other bum that was trying to stow away on the train.
Yeah.
Interesting. Uh, Roy Del Ruth, who was the highest paid director at Warner Brothers, he was actually originally assigned to direct this movie, but he refused. And he told the producer, Hal B. Wallace, that the subject is heavy and morbid. There's not one moment of relief anywhere, and he didn't feel it had any box office appeal. It was depressing, and it seemed like the wrong time to tell this depressing story because we were in the Great Depression. Everybody's got a harsh reality going on, and who's going to want to come and see this? So he refused to direct it. And Mervyn LeRoy, who was actually directing 42nd Street at the time, which is a great musical, he dropped out of doing that and left it to Lloyd Bacon to finish, and he signed on because I guess he realized this was a great property that could be a great movie. So interesting how wrong Roy Del Ruth was, because this movie was a big success, and,
Yeah, another
both
staple we just
critically and
saw
at
of
the
these
box
type of
office.
films, stock footage. It's another staple of movies
Yes.
in this era. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting that you say that. Until you mentioned that, I didn't really think about the fact that this movie doesn't have any comic relief.
Yeah.
Just because even that character we saw that we were talking about that might have betrayed him in the hotel, that gave him the alcohol on the woman, the hooker,
Yeah.
he's played comedic side
Yes.
characters before,
Yes.
So
Oh, yeah.
there's no
Yes.
comedy
Yeah.
characters, sidekick relief. There's no really scenes of like brevity. There's no humor in this film.
No, it's pretty serious.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice that, honestly.
Yeah.
which I'm not complaining about because I think comedy comedy characters are always annoying. I understand their purpose to break things up, but there's always annoying. Nothing I hate more than watching a Marvel movie where it's like, all right, the world's about to blow up, and then someone quips a stupid joke. It's just like, way to kill the tone of the movie.
Yeah.
Here's another recognizable blonde. This is blonde number two.
Yes.
That's
This is
recognizable.
this is blonde number two. This is this is Glenda Farrell, um, who also had a very good career. Um, she actually was in a lot of pre-code movies, and she was in Mystery of the Wax Museum, which was the original movie that went on to be remade many times, like House of Wax and a couple of others, I believe. Um, and she wound up having a series of films that she made where she played a character named Torchy Blaine, who was like a reporter. And they made 9 movies about this Torchy Blaine character, although she was only in 7 of them. But still, she was very successful. She was in some of those Gold Diggers movies, the musicals, a ton of stuff. She was like, in a way, she was the epitome of the pre-code blonde. Very successful. But again, you don't know her name. Like Glenda Farrell, I don't recognize her name, but I've seen her in a ton of things.
Hmm. Did you go to high school with her?
No, no, she was a couple years ahead of me, so I missed that. But no, would have been good, but no.
Yeah, this is an interesting dynamic with their relationship here. It
Yes,
doesn't play out the way you think it does.
no. I was going to say early on that this character, our hero, he seems to have a lot of good luck with women in a way. Like he seems to be kind of successful with women in this movie,
Which
although
is
depending on
one of the things I was pointing at, where it's just like, yeah, you tell your own story. There's no
yeah,
way
yeah,
the woman isn't chasing you down, you know?
yeah, that's right. I mean, even at the very beginning of the movie, I'm still a bit confused by that. At the very beginning, where he's met at the train station, and his mother's there, and his brother's there, and then there's that woman who's there, and I've never been quite clear on who she's supposed to be. She's not his sister, is she? Because I don't think she's in any of the other family scenes after that. So I thought she was just like a girl who was interested in him, but it doesn't really go anywhere. We don't see that character ever again. Do you remember that character I'm talking about?
You know, we are commenting on this movie as we watch it. You know, a good
Yeah,
time to
yeah.
bring that up would have been when she was on the screen.
It would have been, but
Some point you're
it,
gonna
it,
get a grip of what we're doing here, and you'll learn what we're doing here to talk about
yes,
things as they happen. That's the reason we're watching along with this movie.
true. But at the time, we were talking about other things that weren't happening on the screen, so we kind of bypassed some of that
Do you
stuff.
see me not cut you off when I want to talk about something on the screen? You can always interject.
That's true. That's true. And I
So, out
felt,
of curiosity, what is your favorite Paul Mooney movie? This is something I've thought about for a while. So, we
yeah,
have this and Scarface, both movies we've covered on this channel. Both to me
yes,
are all-time classics.
yeah,
Um, The Life of Emile Zola. I've never seen that one. The Good Earth, I've never seen that one. I don't
yeah,
want to see The Good Earth. But those are two other classics he's made as well. I've seen a few other of his
yeah,
movies, but like Angel on My Shoulder because it was a public domain and it was in like the dollar stores everywhere. Um,
yeah,
I thought he made some
yeah.
film noirs as well. I could be wrong, but did he make a classic film noir as well?
Good question. This is kind of a little too early. He was in something called Black Fury. That can't
Mhm.
be. Um, Later on, Juarez, We Are Not Alone, Hudson's Bay, Commando Strike at Dawn.
No.
Stage door
There's this
canteen.
there was this
Counterattack.
really you can just read off names. No, there's this really Lana Turner, I think is her name. Didn't him
Yeah.
and Lana Turner come in some like popular film noir?
Um, I don't
I could
know.
be completely wrong.
Not that I know of, but um, I'll see if I can find out.
Lana Turner, Paul Mooney. Let me see. I thought they came in a movie together. The Postman Always Rings Twice or something. Maybe that's someone else I'm thinking about.
Yeah, that's not him. That's John Garfield, maybe. And the Postman
Yeah,
always rings
John
twice.
Garfield. That's what I'm thinking of. John
Yeah,
Garfield.
they do kind of look alike now that you
Well, they're both
mention it.
Jewish too. They're both Jewish actors as well,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Okay. So
yeah,
for Paul Mooney, I mean, I guess we should stick to his classics. What
yeah.
would be your favorite one? We, like I said, we covered Scarface and Fugitive. We're covering now
Hmm.
on the channel,
Yeah,
and Life of Emile Zola. I think that's where he played a violinist or something. But I've heard of that movie. I've never seen it. And
yeah.
you said you saw The Good Earth?
Um, I think I saw part of it on TV. I don't know if I've ever seen the whole thing, to be
Hmm.
honest. Yeah,
Well, I guess it mainly boils down to this and Scarface then.
yeah. Well, yeah, those are the two for me for sure.
Hmm.
I think I would probably have to pick this one. I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang
Mm,
is my favorite. Although
interesting.
Scarface is, that's it's a tough call, really. But
Extremely tough call.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
both so good.
yeah, yeah. That's a tough one.
Yeah. It's kind of like Sophie's Choice. Take my son.
That's right. I think I did see Hudson's Bay, which is, of course, based in Canadian history, Hollywood version, and that's kind of my part of the world in a way. Like I'm not right on Hudson's Bay, but it's kind of near where I am.
Mhm.
So I think I did see that movie, but I don't think I don't think it was like amazing. I think it was good, but it's
Mhm.
not great like these two that we're talking about.
What's interesting about this movie is that, well, if you look at the things on the screen, again, a very 1930s thing to do. I mean, obviously, we're seeing the same actor, was he in like his early 30s or whatever he is, in this movie.
Yeah,
And he looks the same. They don't really make an effort to age him up.
yeah,
But theoretically, if you just look at the cues on the screen with the calendars and the pay stubs and different
yeah,
things marking time, it seems
yeah,
like he ages a lot in this movie.
yeah,
'Cause I think he's had this job for like 5 or 6 years or something. And then you saw
yeah.
the calendar early on when he went to prison. And obviously when he
Yes,
came away from the war, um, he's probably aged like 10 years or so, at least, if not a lot longer
yeah, yeah. Well,
since
I
this
think
movie's
we,
age, but they didn't do anything to age him up.
yeah, I think we do go over 10 years throughout the movie because he does come home from World War I,
Well, I'm
which would
saying
be
to
like,
this point, and
yeah.
obviously the
Well,
film
to
goes
this point,
on.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, um, yeah. Well, it was 1922 when they got arrested and convicted, so that's 4 years after the war. Uh,
Mhm.
and then he broke out actually not that long after. Like he was only in jail a few months when he made
Mhm.
that first jailbreak. And then I think you're right that he was out for like 7 years or something like that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure where we're at here
Yeah.
in
But
terms
I
of that.
mean,
But
I wasn't paying full attention because we were looking up his movies when the
yes,
pay stubs were on the screen. But I know the pay stubs, the lot, when I've seen this movie before,
yeah,
it tracks time. So like he was
oh yeah,
making X amount when he had this job, and then the following
that's
year he
right.
had that job, and so I know he's had that job for several years. So, but anyway, it doesn't matter
Yes,
the exact years, but he's been
yes,
they don't do an effort to age him up at all. I guess is my only point, I
no,
guess.
no, yeah, I think you're right about that. Um, of course, this is where he's
And this
meeting
is
the
the only
third.
time you really notice it, is because I think she says she's like 18 or 19 or something, or 20.
Yeah,
This is the
this
time I like, wait a minute. how old is he? This is the first time I thought about it. I'm like, wait a minute. Then I started thinking about the pay stubs and the war and like the prison. I'm like, he's probably his character at least is probably significantly older than her.
Yes, I believe he
And this
is.
is blonde number three, by the way.
Yes, blonde number three. This is Helen Vinson, um, who was in about 40 films between 32 and 45. Uh, Not quite as many as some of the others that we've talked about. Um,
That's a lot of films between 32 and 45.
yeah,
That's a lot of
that's.
films.
But I guess compared to some of the actors who went on for decades. Um, but yeah, she. I think should. I think in real life they
More
were.
calendars, speaking of the calendars tracking
Oh
time.
yes,
Several more
doesn't
months
say
are passing. Yeah.
doesn't say the year though, does it? Just says the month. Um, I think in real life those two were far apart in age. She was much younger than him.
But even in the movie,
Oh yeah, yeah,
they're far apart in age. So
yes, exactly. Yeah, I'm just saying that's accurate. That's like
mhm,
accurate in terms of the true story.
mhm.
And this, I'm not 100% sure. Like, it seems like this is fairly accurate. He did marry this woman, and it seems like, she was perhaps, almost a predator in some ways, like, wanting to rent him the place and then kind of have a relationship with him and all that. But
See,
it's not,
I wasn't around in the 30s like you are, but
yeah.
I highly doubt the real person looked like her. Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah. Um, she may not have. But I'm a little unclear. It seems like it's relatively accurate in terms of his story, but I'm not sure whether he was actually a little more into the marriage than is kind of portrayed here. And then,
There's something about this that's not accurate. If she
yeah,
looked like that, I doubt he was that not into her, you know? It's
exactly,
like,
exactly. Yeah,
because if
yeah,
she looked like that, like, what are you not into, dude? You know? I can
yeah,
understand the marriage souring over other things, but it seemed like he was just not interested in her from the jump, you know? So
yes,
something isn't mathing with this math.
yeah. And I think some people kind of describe it as he had an affair with this other woman, and that's what caused her to sort of turn on him. The movie makes it seem more like she's already being unreasonable and threatening him. So I'm not sure what the actual truth of it is,
That you
but
see, there are a lot of things that make sense. The
yeah,
version we're seeing on screen is the one that makes the least amount of sense.
yeah,
Either she's
yes,
incredibly unattractive and she sees
yeah,
this young, handsome guy that she wants to, you know, grab her, sink her claws into, or he had an affair with a much younger, prettier woman and ruined his own marriage.
yeah,
Something here has to math better than what the math is showing here.
yeah. We may not be getting the complete story here,
No,
but it is,
no.
but it is effective in terms of a film story.
It's incredibly effective. I'm just saying it's
Yeah,
really heavy-handed. You know,
it
it's like,
is. It
you
is.
know,
Yeah, yes. Of course, one of the differences actually in terms of the real story and the movie, in the movie they show him kind of becoming this successful guy, construction, building, architecture, whatever it is. He's involved in that industry. But in reality, he actually became a successful editor and publisher of Greater Chicago magazine. So it's a completely different field that he went into, and he really did become successful. I'm not sure
mm.
why they changed it, but um, yeah, that's one of the differences.
Well, I think they would maybe try to make a parallel in that like he started working on a chain gang outside and he was working with like the same kind of similar stuff on the outside.
Yeah,
It just
and they also say during the war he kind of learned this stuff working in the
mm,
engineering corps.
mm.
Um, and I think that might be true that he did work in the engineering corps, but for some reason, in real life, he wound up a successful publisher. Um,
I
yeah,
think this is more linear. Like you
it
just it's
is.
a natural progression. rather than bringing
Yeah.
something out of left field that may be more accurate, but it doesn't play out cinematically like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like keep it simple, stupid type logic you do when you make movies.
Yeah. I suppose it's not quite as manly to publish a magazine as it is to build stuff, break rocks in the hot sun.
But again, it comes out of left field, so you'd have to establish it. And it's like, from a
Yeah.
storytelling standpoint, what does editing a magazine have to do with anything the character has done so far in the army or when he came out or in prison, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Totally. Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, yeah, it's his story, man. So he is
Yeah.
the
That's
hero in
right.
his own story.
That's right.
He gets to tell his version of it.
Yes, it does.
And in his version, and he is a real ladies' man, and he's done no wrong, and he didn't even have to grow as a person. All he needed was the opportunity.
Yeah.
Normally,
That's
it's like,
true.
oh, you learn from something. He hasn't really learned from anything. The only
Yeah.
thing that was missing was the opportunity. He always had it in him.
Yeah.
Which again, it's what happens when you have autobiographies or message movies, and which this is a combination of both. You're going from autobiography into a message movie where it's like,
Yeah.
well, it's going to be really slanted because I'm telling my own story, and then it's going to be even more slanted in a message movie. So it's like heavy-handed on top of heavy-handed. It's like, all right, I'm gonna take 2 scoops of ice cream. No, we're gonna add 2 more scoops of ice cream, and then it just gets
Yeah.
really, really, really fatty. So
Yeah. Yeah. And
again, another
interesting.
staple of these type of movies. They got to
Yes.
show you the map. Well,
Yes.
on top of stock footage to
That's
show
right.
he's going somewhere. And then they cut straight to a room, no establishing shot of where they're actually at. Hold
Yeah.
so you can read it. Very, very much a 1930s transition.
Yeah.
All that to go back into the same room with different furniture,
Yeah.
which is what a lot of this is. It's like 3 or 4 rooms, just rearrange the furniture.
Yeah. Yeah. So this stuff is fairly accurate, but it's also slightly different in terms of what happened. But he did agree to go back to Georgia. He made a decision. Um, he wouldn't have had to because Chicago was really not going to let him be taken, and there was a lot of support for him. But he did make that decision, just like the character does here.
Mm. You know who else had to make a decision like that? Roman Polanski
Oh
when he left
yes,
the country. I was like,
yeah,
yeah, come back. We're just gonna slap you on the wrist. You won't go to prison. And
yeah.
Polanski's like, no. I seen I'm a fugitive from a chain gang. I know how this
That's
plays
right.
out.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. And apparently, it was July 1929 when he returned to Georgia to finish his prison term. So I would say we're 11 years since the start of the film at this point.
Okay.
And of course, it pretty much played out as it does in the movie, where they kind of lied to him, and it kept stretching longer and longer than what they had promised. And so, yeah, it all builds up to the second escape that he will be doing
Mhm.
not too long after this.
What's that black circle on his back? I always wondered that. What the hell is that about?
I think that might be where they aim if
When they
they're
shoot
shooting.
him?
Yeah, like if you're running away, they shoot at that. It's like the target.
Shouldn't it be like a bright orange or yellow or something where they could see it
Well,
better?
yeah, you would think so. Yeah,
When I
yeah,
saw that, I'm like, is that just like a costume design error, or is that like intentional? Like, yeah.
This second escape that we're going to see very soon here does differ in reality and in the book from what they actually show us in the movie. In reality, he actually paid a couple of local men $150 to let him ride to Atlanta, hidden by watermelons and other produce in a car. He was apparently a trustee, and so he was kind of, he wasn't like chained up, I guess. So it was a little bit different from the way they portray it in the movie here. But again, one of the ways it differs. But once he gets to New Jersey, in reality, he couldn't really duplicate the success that he had found in Chicago because it was just too difficult with the Depression on. And that's when he decided he was going to write his memoir. And so that's kind of when this thing started. And of course, it was turned into a movie. And so that's kind of as far as his story had gone at that point. And he actually went to Hollywood and kind of worked on the film for a few weeks, but he found it too stressful because he was still a wanted man. So he went back to New Jersey, and they eventually tried to get him and extradite him, and they kept fighting and fighting. And then finally in 1943, he actually met the newly elected governor of Georgia, Alice Arnall, in New York, and requested a pardon. And Arnall essentially agreed, and he took him back to Georgia in November of 1945 to face the parole board.
He made the same mistake twice.
Well, this time it wasn't a mistake, though, because the governor of the state actually stood by his side as his counsel, and they commuted his sentence, and that was it. He was free. So in 1945, he was finally a free man. So very different, much more positive kind of ending than what we will see play out in this movie.
So essentially, you're saying that Roman Polanski should come back to California.
I think so. I think it's time. He should have met Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was the governor, right?
Mm.
And then maybe Schwarzenegger could have represented
Schwarzenegger
him.
could have terminated his sentence.
That's right. Yeah, he could have. If he can, yeah, Schwarzenegger can handle anything. So yeah. I think he could have done it. That was the moment. I guess he's missed the moment now.
Oh, he's missed the moment now, all right, yeah, because he had a few opportunities where he made a few really good movies overseas, where yes. Hollywood was still embracing him. I think he did Frenzy with Harrison Ford. I know he did a movie, The Piano. I think that won a bunch of awards. I think he did a movie with something window in the title with Johnny Depp, but he was working with a lot of A-list stars who, much like us, loved some of his earlier work, like Chinatown and Rosemary's Baby. I just saw him as like one of the more brilliant directors of his time. But now with cancel culture, no way.
Yeah.
Unless Trump wins again, and Trump happens to be a huge fan of his movies, that's the only way it's going to happen.
Oh, dear. Don't even want to speculate on that one. But one other interesting thing is that apparently there is some suggestion that his brother, who is, of course, the priest that we see in the movie, not the actor, but his brother in real life, there's some suggestion that he actually wrote the book, or at least Ghost wrote the book, and I think he actually sued at some point to try and get more.
He sued his own brother, or he showed Warner Brothers?
I think he sued his brother to try and get more of the profits, I guess, from both the book and the movie. So that's interesting.
That's kind of sad.
Yeah. But, that book, and I think he wrote another book, and the whole, all that material was also turned into a TV movie in the 80s, starring Val Kilmer.
Really?
It was a television movie called The Man Who Broke 1,000 Chains, 1987. So I
Okay.
guess it's kind of the same thing in a way, maybe, but it might be slightly different. I haven't
The
seen it.
Iceman, huh?
Yeah. So,
You're dangerous on that chain gang.
but the critics all loved this movie. It was all positive, and it made a lot of money. $650,000 domestically, 949,000 in foreign markets, and it was the third highest success of the year for Warner Brothers after Gold Diggers of 1933 and 42nd Street,
Two
which are
musicals.
actually, yeah, two kind of feel good musicals. I love them actually, Busby Berkeley, and yeah, but it was the third biggest hit for them. And it got some nominations for Academy Awards, Best Picture, Best Actor, and Best Sound Recording. Didn't win any of them, but it was nominated.
Man,
And
the
it won,
standards of sound recording have certainly changed.
yeah. And it also won Best Picture from the National Board of Review. And in 1991, it was selected for preservation by the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. So, it's definitely got a lot of acclaim, and I think it deserved it.
Mhm. So I asked you a question earlier.
Yes.
What is your favorite Paul Mooney film? So I'm a huge Paul Mooney fan. I love
Yes.
his over-exaggerated acting. I love it when actors overact. I mean, Cagney's my
Yeah.
favorite actor for that reason.
Yeah.
Um, certainly the 80s version of Jack Nicholson may be one of
Yeah.
my favorite actors of all time. So as far as my favorite Paul Mooney character film goes, I think maybe this might be his best performance. And
Yeah.
the ending of this movie is just one of my favorite endings of a movie ever.
Yes.
But far as the overall movie from beginning to end, I would have to go with Scarface.
Yeah.
Even though the ending of this movie is like far as endings for movies, this ending is higher on the list than as far as like the list of my favorite movies. Like no, these movies are probably here on the list of my favorite movies, and the ending for this movie is probably here. Now that we
Yeah.
have visuals, people can see what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
While I love the ending for this movie better than I like most endings, um, I would say that Scarface, I think, from soup to nuts, I think I like it better just because I'm more fully engaged. With this, I'm a little bit conscious that it's just too heavy-handed. If this would have
Yeah.
just a little bit more nuance, just a little bit more, less
Yeah.
messagey and less, just give the character a little bit of flaw or something. Um,
Yeah.
then it probably would be better than Scarface for me. But it's really
Yeah.
close. And like I said, the
Yeah.
ending I think is better than anything in Scarface. But just as an overall movie, I go with Scarface.
Well, that's fair enough. And yeah, I can't really argue with that. I think they're both great. I love them both. And it is a tough call.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, what can
You
you
can't go
say? They're
wrong.
both.
You can't go wrong. I wouldn't
No,
argue either
no,
way.
you really
You
can't.
ask me next week, I may change my mind.
Yeah, that's true.
If I, well, it's they're just both that good. So
Yeah. And interesting, you mentioned, that he did make Scarface right before this. And the director actually just before this had made Little Caesar. So between the two of them, they kind of established the whole gangster genre,
mhm.
and then they made this movie, which kind of was also groundbreaking in a different way.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. But yeah, I
Um,
mean, this is definitely a must watch. Here they put a little bit of gray, I think, at his temples.
oh
This is the only
yeah,
time I think, where they tried to make him look a little bit older um,
yes,
in that
it's
close up.
finally getting to him here. All this years of abuse and
Yeah.
whatnot.
And I don't know if it's
Yeah.
more so aging him up that they're trying to do here, but just to show that he's hitting a breaking point.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I love that. I love it. I love the acting. It's just so over
Yeah.
exaggerated, and I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah.
This
So you're
escape
interested?
almost seems too simple. It makes
Yeah.
sense that this isn't what really happened.
No.
Um, I mean, it sounds like his real escape was simple as well, but the fact that he wasn't on a chain gang kind of explains why it was that simple.
Yeah.
But to be on a
And
chain gang and to escape a second time this easily just seems
yeah.
crazy.
I think in reality he was a trustee, and so he wasn't really even missed for about an hour, because they kind of trusted him to do things. So it was easy enough to sneak out. But here, yeah, it's more like a Hollywood action sequence.
Well, you need some action, don't you? It's the third
Oh,
act,
yeah,
and even though
yeah,
technically these movies don't really have a lot of third acts at this time, but you
yeah.
need some kind of action.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It makes perfect sense. It's an act of desperation. He's hit the breaking point.
Mhm.
He just needs to get out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Um,
yeah, this is highly recommend. Obviously, you know, you guys are if you're watching this, you're not getting the full experience of the movie. So hopefully you've seen it before. Definitely watch it again if you haven't seen it. It's a must watch. Um, one of my favorite movies of all time. One of my favorite actors of all time. One of the better message movies made in this era. One of the best early sound films, certainly. The limitations of the time of this, that the time that this movie was made doesn't really affect it too much in a negative way. Um, Obviously, it's not gonna fully appeal to you if you only look at it through a modern lens. Like I find the overacting to be charming. Um, some people may just find it to be hammy. You got to kind of accept that going into it. Um, the style of filmmaking with the lack of establishing shots, pausing on things that you need to read on the screen, the way they do the passage of time, the static nature of shots moving from room to room that looks really similar to each other. Those are, you know, and even here with the uh this, you know, obviously they're just driving in a studio, rare projection. So there's certain things you have to accept, but I think if you do accept those things and you go in open-minded, even a modern film lover will find a lot to like here. And yeah, I mean, obviously I've mentioned this a lot already. It's very heavy-handed. So if you're looking for nuance or character development, the character doesn't really develop much. I guess the most development that happens is he actually turns into a criminal at the end,
yeah,
and which is again one of the greatest endings in the history of cinema. So,
yeah,
your thoughts?
yeah. Well, I agree with everything you said, and yeah, that's the arc that I think this movie kind of establishes. I think this may be the first movie to do it. That sort of innocent character who winds up becoming a hardened criminal by the end, and it's the system that's done it to him. And there certainly have been a lot of other movies since then that have followed that, and I still think this may be the best. It makes that argument very well. It really, it just all comes together, and you can't help but believe it. This
Mhm.
is what happened. And knowing the true story, I guess it didn't quite happen to the guy, but in the world of the movie, though, it makes perfect sense, and you can totally buy it. And yeah, that ending, that's got to be up there in my top, I don't know, top three endings of all time.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure what
I'd
the
have to
other two
think
would
about
be.
it. Without thinking about it, it's definitely top 10, but I'd have
Yeah,
to think about it. Could be even a lot higher than that, but
yeah,
without a doubt,
yeah,
it's top 10, no question at all.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. This moment here, with his buddy, I almost expected him to like take the dynamite and kind of blow himself up. Just, taking out the bad guys, like jumping off the truck with the dynamite because he's
You're
dying, he's been
insane.
shot, you
You're
know.
insane.
But no, well, it's good they didn't do it. Let's put it that way.
Good you didn't write this script.
Yeah, that's right.
That would have been
Um,
really, really morbid. Parts of his body flying all over the place.
that's right. Then it
But
really,
yeah, so another reason why I think this movie works with the, I'm sorry, the ending for this movie works because we both talked about it a
yeah,
lot. Another reason why it works is because there is no character development. So the
yeah,
idea that the system is broken, it doesn't work. without that ending, because they don't show, we don't see him turn into a criminal because of what he went through. He perseveres from everything he went through. So to show
Mhm.
that this system can turn even the best of us into a criminal, that ending is necessary because he didn't develop into that. The ending kind of, the ending was so good, it did what 20 minutes of turning the character into a bad guy would have done. It just kind of surmised it in that one scene. Whereas, like, if we would have seen him slowly do things that are immoral, that would have made the point. And because we never got that, without that ending, the movie isn't as effective. It kind of does what 20 minutes of character development would have done in that one scene. That's why it resonates with me so quickly. It's just like, all you need is that one really good scene, and you don't even need like 20 minutes of us showing us that he's changed. That did
Yeah,
everything right there.
yeah, totally. Like I said, it stuck with me ever since I saw it. Never forgot it. I was so thrilled to finally get my own copy of this movie.
Oh, you remember to show your copy before
Yeah, that's right.
before
So,
before we ended. You remember to show your copy.
yeah, for some reason, it was really hard to come by. I don't know why, but very glad to have it in my collection, and I'll be watching it many times, assuming I live long enough to keep watching it. But yeah, um, it's definitely, for me, it's one of the great movies of all time.
Yeah, for a lot of people too. It's a classic. Glad we got to rewatch it for this. It's been too long since I've seen it. Part of the fun of this is just watching some classics that normally you wouldn't find the time to revisit or find a time to watch. And
Yeah,
this was a lot of fun. This was a lot of fun. One of the better movies we've done on this show so far. And yeah, and, absolute classic.
yeah.
Thanks for watching along with us. Hopefully, we clarified to everyone what to expect from this show. You're not going to see the whole damn movie. Go buy it. It's pretty cheap. And
Yeah,
there we go. The ending that we talked
yeah.
about for so long. There it is.
Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing.
Do you want to do the new outro?
No, you better do it.
Okay. I have 10 seconds. Okay. Well, thanks for watching. And we'll catch you next time because I don't have time to do the outro. Goodbye, folks.